So the bells can go off that we've hit this magic number. My apologies for coughing. I didn't announce much in California, but I announced enough to irritate my throat. So I will apologize for that in advance. First of all, welcome Aqua Athletes to this town hall meeting. This is going to be really unstructured. Yes, we do have a script and we follow it, but it's really meant to be more of a initial education and then some Q&A at the end. And so we're going to move through this actually fairly quickly. And we're not having to be on the call for an hour, even though it's set for a call. Our Bermuda call, excuse me, last week did go for an hour. And so we needed all of it, but we also had another extra Madeira call for a cross, and we didn't need to use the entire time. The first thing I want to do is, I mean, if you guys are going to be competing in the aquathlon, it's important for you to know a little bit of the history, right? Because people are going to ask you stuff like, what is aquathlon? Sounds like insurance or something. Is it a race? What is it? But I'll tell you not so much on the response to how you would go back to someone who asked you that question, but really the history. Anybody know when the first aquathlon took place at world championship level? Anybody know? I see Polly raising her hand. Is it a guess or you know for sure? Don't cheat and go to the internet.
It was Honolulu in 2005.
You're close. It was Noosa, Australia in 1998. And then Noosa was able to hold it again. Noosa was really open to this whole idea of ocean swims and whatnot. So they created this. So they were followed by Cancun in 2000. USA hosted this once since 1998. Anybody know where it was hosted and when? Bruce, I see your hand go up.
Well, if you're talking about World Championships, it would be Chicago, 2015.
That is correct. That's correct. And Victoria also got it right too through the chat. It was Chicago 2015. It's the only time.
I wasn't cheating. I didn't look at Victoria.
It's the only time that it's been hosted in the US. We need to change that. Mexico has hosted the most aquathlon world championships with 5. And typically they're in obviously destination places where other events are being held. The way that aquathlon works too, in case you get asked real specifics, is when the water temperature is 22 degrees or colder, which is 71.6 roughly Fahrenheit, you're required to wear a wetsuit. And when you wear a wetsuit, it's a swim run event. Where you don't wear a wetsuit, it's a run, swim, run event. And so that's the differential. Runs are almost always 5K, and the swims usually will vary from 750 meters to 1K, which is only said to you during this call because people will often ask, what distance is it? And we're like, well, it's the prerogative of race management to come back with a number that they support, not for the run as much as for the swim. And then the swim will vary based on the water temperatures and whatnot. Sometimes air temperature can play a part in that as well. We used to have standalone world championships for this event. And more recently, we've had them tied in with other races. And we've also had the multi-sport world championship or multi-sport festival, as we often call it, also piggyback this race. And that's how it's going to be supported more than likely going forward. So a little bit of history there for you guys as we go into this call, and we'll move on. The one thing I want to touch on before we do get into some of the details is just how amazing it is to be able to represent your country in this great sport. I talk about World Championship really being your Olympic Games. And I've mentioned that many, many, many times this year on some of these town hall calls that we have. It really is. This is your chance to wear the red, white, and blue, to put that USA on your chest and feel proud that you have a chance to do what so few have a chance to do as well, and that is represent your country. And so in an Olympic year, when we had a great Tokyo performance, obviously we're hoping we'll match that performance with many of you in Extra Madeira coming up in a few weeks. The one thing that did happen in 2011 is we had a race at this venue. And for some of you, and I'm not sure anybody on this call necessarily was there attending that event, but they had held a pretty solid race there. It was obviously not aquathlon, it was cross. But on the website, you can pull it up through a standard Google search, triathlon.org/event/2011 _ You'll be able to pull up a video at the bottom of that page. And that video will show you in about 19 minutes what the course looked like for cross. More than likely, we'll see a lot of that for the swim if they use the exact same area of the lake. And they'll use the similar parts of the same run course that they use for cross back there as well, if they're planning on doing an off-road run. So that was something that as I was doing research a couple of weeks ago, I was able to find, and there were some interesting things that were on that site. Now, granted, trying to find any current information on the site is not as easily done. Trust me, because I spent time doing it today, and it wasn't there. And so I reached back to the race director to say, Jorge, can you please tell us when you're going to be able to move on more information? And I haven't got anything back because it was probably about 8 o'clock at night when he received that from me. But Jorge is a guy who's been entrenched in the sport in Spain for a very, very long time. He's very responsive. They'll do a great job and do some fun things with the event. Before we get too far into this, I really do want to segue to Jeff Manson. Jeff, as you know, does all of our travel for our World Championship teams, and he was not slated to manage any travel or transportation or hotel for any part of this trip, but has done yeoman's work to step up and actually find a space for the athletes to consider and whatnot. So I'll defer to Jeff for that, and also have Jeff speak to some of the things that are happening with COVID. Also want to introduce Lindsay Welker, who has a name on her screen. She's actually driving from Denver. We were both in the Malibu race this last week and helping put on a collegiate championship, this Saturday and Sunday of this past week. And so she's just coming home, but she'll have a chance to chime in on a few things. But I want to make sure she get introduced as well as someone who's really doing a lot of great things on our behalf at USAT to keep the ball rolling along. So Jeff, I will defer to you, and you can cover some of the things you've done on the travel side and how we're doing with COVID and prep and expectations. That would be great.
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Yeah, first I'll hit on the ever evolving COVID restrictions across the world. So we're going to touch base on that real quick. So for Spain, this recently has changed, and also keep in mind, these things are constantly evolving, changing. So what I go over today could possibly change in the coming weeks or months, and we'll obviously keep you updated if anything does change. But I will kind of go over the restrictions to get into Spain, and also getting back to the US. So first of all, to get to Spain, this recently changed in early September. For US citizens, they are now requiring that US citizens be fully vaccinated to enter Spain. There are some essential travelers that can go there that aren't vaccinated, that have to show proof of negative test, but for the most part, everyone, US citizens, need to be vaccinated. So if you are planning to go to Spain in October, and you're not vaccinated, you would need to do that ASAP. You probably need to take the Johnson & Johnson in order to be fully vaccinated. So just keep that in mind. If that changes or anything, updates on that, we'll let you know. The other thing also, this has been ongoing in the US. When you return to the US, you have to show proof of negative test within 3 days of your departure flight. So that's been in place since I think January of this year, so that hasn't changed. There's been some talk about potentially letting fully vaccinated people not having to do that, but that so far, to my knowledge, has not changed yet. So you'll need to get that test over in Spain 3 days before you depart back to the US. And what we'll do is we'll try to identify some locations near the venue, near some cities. I know the venue kind of is isolated, but there's some cities around there that do have some COVID testing, and we'll make sure to get those to everyone so you can schedule that ahead of time, so you can not have to worry about that when you're over there. So I know the local organizing committee is working on that as well. So as soon as we have information about testing over there, we'll let everyone know, or we'll get that information to Tim and Lindsay. The other thing as well, and I think Lindsay can jump in on this as well, is that World Triathlon does also require proof of negative test for their events. And that is, I believe, within 3 days of your departure to Europe or Spain, or 6 days before the event in case you were traveling. So Lindsay, maybe you want to hit on that real quick before I jump into the other travel stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Sorry for the road noise behind me. Like Tim said, I'm in the car. But in terms of the World Triathlon COVID kind of screening process that they are requiring for all the athletes, there will be an online portal that we'll send the link out as the event gets closer, and you'll fill out some information, and you will be required to upload proof of a negative COVID test. And like Jeff mentioned, this has to be done within 72 hours of departure from the US, or if you are choosing to go over to Spain early for vacation or whatnot, you can also get it in Spain. It just has to be within 6 days of the event. And they are pretty strict on this, and you won't be allowed to pick up your race packet until you have completed the online questionnaire. So just kind of get that on your radar. Nothing you need to do right now, but just know you will need to have a negative COVID test in order to race.
You broke up a little bit, Lindsay, but essentially what she was saying is that without that upload of that questionnaire, you will not be able to pick up your race packet on the weekend of the event. They will actually check to make sure that's been uploaded before you can do anything along those lines. And so that will be the requirement.
Yeah, and then the one last thing is Spain does require basically a health declaration form that you need to fill out within 48 hours of your departure. And I believe, I haven't looked at it real closely, but I believe that's when you're going to upload your proof of vaccination as well. And they'll probably ask a couple other questions about any symptoms you might have. So we'll make sure you get that link as well. That will be required to enter Spain. After you fill that out, submit it, you'll get a QR code basically, and that's kind of your entrance into Spain is that. Now, if you're traveling obviously before or after in other countries around Europe, each country may have their own requirements and restrictions. So make sure if you're traveling, you're looking into other countries' different requirements, because each one could have different requirements, different restrictions. It's not the same for everyone. So I think that's it with COVID. I'll kind of now touch base on hotels. So we just, as of today, I finally was able to secure some hotels and get our website built. So I will put that here in the chat here shortly, the link. But basically, there's not really any hotels right next to the venue. The nearest hotels or cities are about 20-30 minutes via car. So we got a couple hotels in Placencia, which is about 20 to 30 minutes via car to the venue. Those will be your nearest cities to the venue. So I have about 25 rooms right now that I was able to secure, and I have about one week before I have to release those. So if you're interested, definitely jump on those soon before I have to release those back to the hotel. So again, I will post that here shortly. Tim and Lindsay will also get that information out via email after this as well. If you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me as well. And then one other thing too, when you're flying to Spain, the nearest airports are going to be Madrid or Seville, which are, it's about roughly 3 hours between both airports. I think Seville may be a little bit longer. So kind of keep that in mind when planning a trip. You're going to have a good chunk of a drive to get to the venue or get to the hotels. I think that's it for me, Tim.
Thanks, Jeff. A couple of things have been questioned in the chat, and so there are a couple of things that we want to probably get to. The one was the televisit test that you can do, which actually is a pretty handy thing, where you have a person actually observe the actual testing, and then they're able to confirm of that negative result that may occur. It's certainly something that we'll have to follow up with to make sure that's acceptable. Typically, what we've been able to do with World Championship, actually we've only been to one, but we prep for many, as you all know, is to really take a hard look at what we can do in our home base. So I was able to go to King Soopers as an example, do a rapid antigen test. In 15 minutes, I knew that I was negative, and I was able to take that result with me and use it as I arrived at the airport and got on my United flight. And then we were able to test when we were at the venue, doing a very similar test where we were able to get that as well. So the locations are not as easily found, maybe as someone might like, but I think as we get closer and as race management starts seeing what the demand for tests are going to be, they may be able to get some mobile sites and some other things set up on our behalf or other countries' behalf, just to make sure that they're not too difficult to find and take too much time away from what people are there doing, that is to race and have a great time. So anything to add to that? Okay. The race date, I see a couple of people have posted when's the race, what time does it start. All we know now is it's Saturday, the 30th. We don't know the time yet. But because this is also, or at least supposed to be, a shared Spanish multi-sport festival national championship weekend, my gut tells me that we're going to be positioned around one of their events. Cross obviously is Sunday. And so what we'll probably end up doing is positioning this race based on what they tell us, of course, but probably I would say one of the earlier races on Saturday, hopefully. So if people need to get out and want to get back home for the next week starts, they might be able to do that. But we don't know. And so I've asked for Jorge to get us a schedule. Lindsay's asked for some things as well. And so as we get more detail, we'll obviously share that with you guys immediately. We do know that that does create a little bit of a problem as far as if you're trying to fly out that day. One of the things you might want to consider is based on the fact that if you're a podium finisher, the award ceremony usually takes place either at the end of the same day or at the end of a second day of events. And so that also can create some obstacles if you're feeling like there's something you want to do, but yet you want to stay for an award ceremony if you're actually racing at the top of your game right now and feel like you could be a podium finisher. All right. Some other things that we want to mention too that we were able to get from the cross guide, and the cross guide was general in a few places. And that has to do with the swim, which will be in the waters of Gabriel Y. Galan Reservoir, which is, again, it's a big body of water that takes place there, the complex of El Anillo. And so that will be, again, where they also stationed this race in Cross in 2011, more than likely they'll have the same area for the exit and entrance points as well. Again, we talked about distance already. We don't know what the exact distance is going to be, but it's probably going to be 750 to 1,000 meters for the swim, and it'll more than likely be that 5K run that we talked about. We've nearly always seen in a world championship. Weather, high typically in this region is around 22 degrees Celsius, which is 71.6. The lows usually get down to 55.4 degrees, which is 13 degrees Celsius. So not a major swing in temperature, but that should give you some idea of what the weather might be for packing clothes and other insulated items, whether it be gloves or caps or second layer caps or something like that, just to be aware of that. It also will tell you that the body of water, which I've looked at, again, I can't account for what the water temperature is by looking at the water, but it seems to be a somewhat of a rougher body of water, somewhat rougher, darker, deeper. And typically those can heat up and cool off really fast. And so my gut tells me it's probably going to be a wetsuit swim, but we'll obviously get that information to you once we have that. All the support's going to take place at one complex, which is this island where the event essentially is hosted by, and it's really a cool little area, as you'll see on a map when you go back to that 2011 venue. It's where the info desk is, packet pickup, recovery is there. It's where you're going to do the expo purchases, because you're probably going to buy some things while you're there. It's where the medal ceremonies are going to be. There's cafes there. It's really going to be the core of activity for you, and it's going to be all positioned on that island. Okay. We understand that registration will be select hours, probably on Thursday for at least a few hours. We don't know that yet. Typically for Worlds. And then for certain on that Friday, as some athletes start arriving and are looking for a way to actually get that done before the races start on Saturday. Virtual briefing more than likely will happen through race management. What we will do is we will not be there unless we have the threshold that's needed for the staff, including Lindsay and myself, to attend. Right now, the numbers would not validate us being there as a team in support, but we will do everything we can, such as having a Zoom call as we look at the timing as we get up to race day. Sammy, can you just see who that is real quick? Okay, you have to call her back. Thank you. So that is, again, what we'll do is we'll play a hand for Q&A that entire week. What we'll do too is lean on Slack channel, and I'll defer to Lindsay to talk a little bit about what she's been able to create with Slack channels as a communication device for all of our events.
Thanks, Tim. So like Tim mentioned, we will utilize for the athletes that pay the final registration fee. And this is essentially like a texting app. We can send out mass messages to all of you. You'll get notifications to your phone, just like you would an iMessage and whatnot. More to come on this, but you will receive a link in your email that you can join, and you just click join, and it'll take you to the Team USA Extremadura Slack channel, and it'll ask you to download it on your phone, and that's all you have to do. And then we will send out messages, like I said, on that platform. It's also a great way that you guys can communicate amongst each other. So if you're looking for an athlete to go out to dinner with, or if you get over to Spain and realize you have forgotten something and you need to see if another athlete might have that, you can post it in the Slack channel. Just a great way for communication. We'll still utilize emails, but any quick updates will definitely be sent out via Slack.
Thanks, Lindsay. The other thing that's going to be required, as you guys all know too, is to wear the Roka uniform, which is absolutely mandatory. Matter of fact, with great likelihood, you'll not be allowed to compete if you don't have the Roka uniform. They've been a little bit more particular this year about assuring that as you do check-in, whether that be the day before or race morning. And so just make sure that you guys have your Roka uniform that you maybe had for the last several years. You can still wear that one for this particular race. One thing that I will guarantee you is if there is word, and I don't mean this to mean anything else other than the importance of supporting the partner that's gotten behind this event and these teams over the last couple of years, is that if we do find that someone wears a uniform other than Roka, there will be that 1 year suspension from Team USA that we'll have to honor. Again, not to really punish you, but just to give something back to our partner to say, this is what we're going to do to further enforce this. The World Triathlon is expecting us to enforce it as well. Okay. So Lindsay, anything you want to add to that?
No, I did drop the link in the chat with some information about gear. One link is for the parade kit, which is just Team USA gear, shorts, a tech tee, a hat, and a quarter zip. This is not required, but it's highly encouraged. If you're gonna be part of the team and go over to Spain, wear this, around site, around the venue, around the hotel. Just shows that you're representing Team USA. But also, if you do podium, you are required to wear the parade kit. So that is something to keep in mind. And then, like Tim mentioned, you do need to have the Roka tri-suit. So I dropped the Roka contact email in the chat. So if you don't have a tri-suit yet, send an email to that support@roka.com, and they will get back to you with a link to where you can purchase your tri-suit.
Peter, you asked about needing to buy a second one. No, matter of fact, the one Roka that you have going back however far is the one that you can wear for the race. So hopefully that makes it really easy for you guys to do that. Okay. Let's keep moving along. Outside of uniform, we do have some things that we want to just briefly chat about, and that is 2022 qualification. One of the things that we had to do is really take a look at what is it that we're doing that is consistent with what we've done with all the other venues and racing opportunities, and what is fairest to all the athletes who are trying to jump through hoops and do all sorts of things to make the world experience most optimum. we're not going to be able to please everybody. We know that. And we apologize to those who may not be happy with the priorities that we established and that we sent out a couple weeks ago. But the one thing I will promise you is that we've worked with a lot of people on these documents. We've worked with committee chairs. We've worked with our own internal staff. We've reviewed what we've done with the other disciplines that are also kind of in the same scenario between Almere and between Do Worlds and Cross and this one. There's just been a need for us to be as consistent as we possibly can be. So as we look at 2022, yes, the priority will go to legacy and those athletes. Priority 2 will be those that actually compete in this event, and then are based on a finished place will be priority 2. Priority 3 will be those who had paid the deposit and are not going to be going to Extra Madeira, and so that's important. Priority 4 will land on the national championship that we announced, as long as it's announced it with enough lead time in 2022 as a final qualifier, and then rankings. One thing I will guarantee you, and I'll say I probably got one of the most brash emails I've ever seen in my entire life, and it's fine. He was mad, he was upset, but I'll tell you that nearly every person that wants to be on this team is going to earn the right to be on this team for 2022. I have never in my life seen any event other than Olympic tri ever fill up for a world championship. We've also gone back to World Triathlon to say, can we get more spots? Can we get more than the 18 that's been allocated to us? And so the goal of ours is to get to 25 or some number thereabout, and that will further support our desire to take a team that has great numbers and really in some situations has some crossover. Because if you get to that 4th qualifier where it's a 2022 national championship, then you have the ability to qualify for that event at that particular race, and then tie it in with some other races you might want to do at the Multi-Sport Festival, which is where the World Championship will be held next year. So I don't want to dwell on that much longer. I don't want us to certainly have a lot of debate, because that's not what we're talking about here in this call. But I do know that there's some of you on this call have posed the question and are kind of looking what the options are going to be for you. Okay. And so we'll certainly work through all that detail. We'll answer all the questions specifically and make sure that you get what you need to know as you go into 2022. Okay. So with that said, the registration is, as Lindsay noted, we have extended the registration deadline to be Thursday at midnight. We wanted to have this call with you. Yes, it was originally set for last week, but we wanted you guys to be able to work through some questions that maybe you had. So we've been able to extend the deadline for you through midnight of this week, this Thursday. We've also been granted the opportunity, if we had to extend it one more day. And I don't think we want to do that. I think we want to try to get all the questions answered here as part of this call or in subsequent emails that might be landing in our inbox, so that Thursday at midnight, which is obviously enough time through this week, hopefully, for you guys to really make a commitment or not to this event. And I just certainly hope that most of you will be able to do that. So let's go back. Lindsay, I don't know if you have access easily to the chat room, but
Yeah.
I know you've been bringing some chat as we've been going through this. I don't want to repeat those that you've already answered.
Yeah, just one thing though, Tim, I want to follow up on with the registration. So the final registration link, which is where you have to pay the World Tri payment, none of you guys have received that yet. That will be going out this evening after this call. So that is 100 euros. We will convert that to US dollars, and that will be the fee that you have to pay. And that is different than the $75 deposit that you have already paid. This is the fee that you have to pay to actually compete in the race, and that money goes right to World Triathlon.
Yep. There's a couple of questions on terrain and whatnot. We don't know what the course terrain is going to be just yet. We understand it could be a combination of dirt and asphalt. And we posed the question, just haven't gotten anything back yet. But once we do, we'll get that over to you guys. One of the things you might want to do, though, seriously, is if you have the ability to do a little bit of off-road running, if you haven't ever before, whether it be a trail or rock, gravel, whatever, is just try it a little bit. And as we get information back, we'll share with you guys what it is we're going to be running on, just so you guys have a sense of the feel, what kind of shoes you want. If you're going to put training flats on or racing flats or whatever, obviously the terrain's going to have a little bit of a difference in how you're going to feel going through that type of terrain. Water temps, we talked about that a little bit. We expect it to be a wetsuit swim, but we don't know just certain yet. And so once we get that, we will let you know for sure. We talked about the rapid test. We've talked about exact date and location, which we don't know yet. Still uncertain. Lindsay, other ones that you've kind of scanned that might need to still be answered?
Yeah, there's been a couple of questions about the Parade of Nations. We do not know if there will be a parade. Probably not. There has not been a parade for any of the other worlds this year, unfortunately. But we'll get final answer on that once we get the athlete guide. Yep,
correct. There was one question about sleeve Roca USA kits still legal. Joe, it's a really good question. And I'll tell you this, that I'm not really very happy right now with World Triathlon holding to their position of the just over the shoulder uniforms not being legal for anything other than long course try and do. I think it's nonsense, but it's not up to me. But here's what we've done is we've gone back to World Triathlon to ask for a dispensation in the rule to say, would you be willing and able to do this, to grant the opportunity for athletes to compete in this uniform? We have not received it yet. I do know that it's also going to be touched on by the technical committee of World Tri as a rule change for next year. But right now we have not been able to get any confirmation on that, but we'll continue to push that and hopefully get an answer from race management in the next couple of weeks. Is that what I'm assuming? And Joe, you're right next to me in the screen on this call. Is that the one you have right now?
I have both, but I prefer this sleeve, and it was legal in Ponte Vedra.
Okay. Yeah, I would say right now the rule would say no, it's not, but our hope is that it might be by race day. Okay. Jerry asked about USAT providing transportation from Madrid to Extremadura. Jeff, maybe you answered that. Is Jeff still on the call?
Jeff answered it in the chat, Tim.
Okay, he answered it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here if you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Can you hear me?
I can see you now.
Yeah, I mean, we're not there's not provided transportation, but if you're interested in private transfers, we can certainly get some pricing for you. And I provided my email as well.
Question about where 2022, worlds might be. We do not know yet. We don't even have a hint. But what we have heard is that there's a possibility they would continue to split up these world championship locations, right? So there's that possibility that aquathlon may be piggybacked with another one of the disciplines, that duathlon may be a standalone, that some of those might be, as we've seen this year, represented in that fashion. We'll know more of that hopefully fairly soon.
Tim, there was a question about testing, COVID testing, if you're doing both aquathlon and then going to duathlon worlds the following week in Aviles. Do you want me to talk on that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep, it fits what we know, but go ahead.
So you will have to have a negative COVID test for both events because they are different LOCs. Putting on the two races, you will have to test before you leave the US for Extremadura, and then you would have to test again at the beginning of the week before Aviles.
That's great. Everybody good with that? Are spectators going to be allowed? You know what? It's a hit and miss situation. When we were in Almere a couple of weeks ago, they were not allowed to start the week, and then they were able to create a process by which one person per athlete was able to gain access to the finish line to help celebrate the finish of that particular athlete. We don't know yet what will happen with that, but it's certainly going to be something that we're going to continue to push. Short sleeve, just to confirm, Peter, the sleeved uniforms we're talking about are the ones that actually are more like a polo shirt that actually go over the shoulder, not the ones that stay over the edge of the shoulder. Okay. So when we're talking about short sleeve, we're talking about the one that actually go over the shoulder just a little bit. That's the one that's not currently legal right now for this race. Joe, did you get your answer on transportation from hotels to race site? It is, again, going to be about a 20 to 25K jaunt for many. Right now, there's not scheduled transportation. Jeff, you still on the call? Yeah, the only way that would probably be included is if race management steps up and says, we're going to create some means of transportation to and from locations that are in where most of the hotels are. But I would not count on it. I would start thinking about what that transportation mode might look like, whether that be, again, looking to see if they have Lyft there or Uber or anything along those lines. I would start that research fairly soon, just so that you're not in a situation where you're somewhat caught and not able to get what you need to get done race morning or race afternoon.
Yeah, it was similar to what was in Denmark, where they picked everybody up and bused us to the site.
Yeah, one of the things I pushed the race director to do last week was to get that athlete guide done, because that athlete guide is the information like that we need to know. It's great to know, so you guys can finish your planning for the event. He said it's in the hands of the technical delegate, which means it's close, which means that hopefully we'll be in a place, that was for Duathlon Worlds, but he's also doing this for Expo Endurance a week before. So he's got to be also close to having that approved by the TD2 for this event. As soon as we get that, we'll get that out to you guys. Question from Katie on car rentals from Madrid Airport. Jeff, have you had a chance to research anything on car rentals?
Yeah, and on my website, I put a link to the car rentals there. So if you check out that website that's on there, there's definitely options right now from Madrid. So, I would recommend renting a car. It's going to be probably cheaper than private transfer, to be honest. There's not a lot of bus or train options either to these little towns. So if you're going to rent a car, I would look into that quickly, and we can provide a couple links as well.
Okay. Bentley says that Enterprise has vehicles. So you might want to get your rental done soon if you're going to have a car. It never really hurts, as long as you know what your parking situation is going to be. It never has to have a car in Europe, just because it allows you the freedom to do what you want to do, go where you want to go, to maybe spend some time checking out different parts of the country. It's kind of fun to be able to do that. And with that car, you're granted that opportunity. Let's talk about USA pins. Paula, you noted what happens with the pins. So Lindsay, you want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, so it'll depend if we have pins and patches for this event. It'll depend on the number of athletes that we get. If we hit that threshold that Tim was mentioning earlier of athletes, we will provide pins for this event. But unfortunately, if not enough athletes register, it's just not a commitment that we can make to provide pins to such a small group.
Let me get off mute there. Parking at the race site, again, will be one of those hit and miss situations. My gut tells me that because it's an island, there are going to be a lot more control with cars and who's going to get access. It also could be a really, really big weekend with the Spanish Multisport Festival happening. So my gut tells me that there's going to be some sort of parking situation off the island, transport to the island where there's a drop off, and the people who get picked up at certain sequences during the days as well. And so that's something you could probably expect to see happen, but we don't have verification on that for sure. But that's something to note in your record of a follow-up question that you can have in the next couple of weeks as we pursue more details for you. Free cancellation. The question is free cancellation. Once we submit the information to World Triathlon, there is not free cancellation of the reg payment. And that's going to be due the end of this week. So if you make the payment Thursday at midnight and then Friday at some point in time, you're like, and Lindsay will obviously tell you when you request perhaps that refund from her, if it's still possible, because we have to get it to them on Friday unless that's changed. Lindsay, nothing's changed on reg to World Tri right now, correct?
Correct. I'll have to have that submitted by end of day on Friday.
So it won't give you a lot of time, but I would really, really make certain that you're confirmed going to go of trying to run us down before end of day Friday to figure out if you're going to be able to get that refund or not for your
Hey, Tim,
payment.
that was regarding the car rental from Bentley. That's what he was talking about, free cancellations for car rental. And I could chime in too. I've rented many cars out of Madrid. they're really cheap. I mean, we're talking like some places $15 to $20 a day. You probably don't want the absolute mini sizes, but my rental for Reveals has cost me something like $150 for 5 days. So they're very inexpensive if you get them now.
Okay. In order to support this team, we have to have 50 athletes register and confirm. So, you know, if we start with 50 that register and it whittles down to 42, 43, we just haven't been able to go. We've made that very clear to our support staffs that there's that possibility that they would not be able to go as well. So right now we're not there yet. The number is far below 50, which is why we're having this call now to, again, hopefully encourage more people to go and be able to experience Team USA, which is one of the most amazing times you'll ever have in your life. We know that because we've been part of it. So.
Hey, Tim, an athlete asked if we're gonna have the race details before the deadline on Thursday. Probably not, correct?
Yeah, more than likely we will not, which I know is frustrating for people. But we apologize. We've pushed, we've continued to push. It's coming, but probably not by the end of this weekend. I'll go back to Jorge tonight. He's in bed right now because he's 8 hours ahead of us. But when he wakes up in the morning, hopefully he'll have a little bit more detail as to where the TDs, technical delegates, are relative to that review. Somebody did, Bentley, you did point out gas is about $11 a gallon. Just know that we paid a little over $10 a gallon for gas in Elmira. So that was for a half a tank in a very economy driven car. We spent $55, just so you know, half a tank. So it is not cheap. That's the only downside of renting. But if you get an economy car and not a gas guzzler, you should be able to get quite a ways through the countryside without having to worry too much about that. All right. Lindsay, anything else you see in the Q&A that we need to touch on for the call?
Just got one more question about the final registration payment. Like if you've already registered, will you be sent the payment? Yes, all aquathlon athletes will be sent the final reg payment tonight, and then you'll have until Thursday at midnight to pay that, which will be the final confirmation of spots on the team.
Yeah, and just know that, you know, this is still hit and miss for us with information from World Triad. We'll continue to push out hard as we can for information to come back to us. Know too that we have really made a focused effort on having about 5 pages of questions answered by each of the event hosts. We know the questions we're going to be asked by you, which is a compliment to you, because you asked probably the best questions of any country that I've heard from other team managers about. And that's a testament to what you do with being focused and honed in on the things that are really critical for you to have in your possession before you guys embark on an event like this. So we'll continue to do that. We'll add a few questions maybe we haven't answered before if you guys pose them to us, but know that we are hunting, pecking, and push for answers to questions that we don't have currently to be able to give to you.
Hey, Tim.
Any guesses on a real quick, when the aquathlon races might start? It is just so hit and miss because of all the events that are going to combine in that weekend. I would hate to tell you and then be wrong. That would be very irresponsible for me to do that. Yes, Lindsay.
I was just gonna touch on a question that came in about getting in touch with other athletes that are going. This will happen after the final payment deadline on Thursday is when we'll create that Slack channel, probably early next week, where then you can communicate amongst each other. So everyone in the Slack channel will be everyone that has confirmed to go to the event. So you can talk about travel plans and whatnot in that channel.
Yep. You're right. We don't know. It's really hard to say. So any other final questions? I'm looking at the last post was 4:46. We're right at 4:46 Mountain Standard Time. Anything else, you guys? This has been a good conversation. You've asked great questions. We'll continue to pursue information. Like we said, after this call, I'll send another email out to Jorge to say what's an ETA on more information, just because we know it's important for you guys to have that before you make final decisions.
Tim, can you talk to the larger race that's going on? Because even when I Googled that, I couldn't find that much information. I know they partnered with all this, I think the Spanish championship, which it looked like there was going to be a large amount of athletes at, but
It will be.
are you getting a sense from any of the other federations, like how large the teams may be or what the level of interest is, just given kind of the timing of everything?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Catherine. And what we believe will happen is that Europe will probably show up and do a great job showing up, and there'll probably be 11 or 12 countries from Europe that'll be there. We believe Canada will be there in scarcity. They'll probably have a handful. What we're hoping for, obviously, is a pretty good number from the U.S. Australia, New Zealand will not be there. They can't even leave their own country and won't be able to leave their country for quite a while now. So how many? It's hard to say. My gut tells me we're going to be at about 15 countries. We're going to be probably at 200 to 250 total athletes in the end. That's probably not going to be much bigger than that. But what that means also, though, is that you're going to have a pretty good chance of having a great finish result, in your age group, which is kind of fun to be able to do at a world championship. But I just don't expect, with the pandemic and the uncertainties around that, with Almira, our team went from over 250 down to 80, which, this team is probably going to end up, I'm guessing, around 40. And other countries are probably going to be a little bit more conservative than we are. I think we might be a little bit more brash because we love to race. We love world championships, but that's probably what we're looking at.
What about the size of the larger event? Any just known on the rest of the weekends?
Yeah, I don't. I know that the Spanish Federation has said that they'll have nearly 1,500 athletes for all their races. And we know that cross will probably be a race in that 175 to 200 range, which would be, again, more universal. So when you throw in a 1,500 person race for all the Spaniards that are coming to attend, when you throw in the World Championship for aquathlon, when you throw in the World Championship for cross, you're probably talking about 2,000 athletes in total. But let me also note this, that also creates scarcity for housing and scarcity for other things in the community. And so if you have not yet booked your hotel, get with Jeff immediately. He's got space. He's got great pricing, as good a price you're going to find anywhere. Because as soon as that gets gobbled up, he has to release those at the end of this week. It's going to be really hard for you to find housing if indeed the numbers hit where the Spanish Federation thinks are going to land. Vaccination timing, such as when it's expiring.
Yeah, I read somewhere that to get into Spain, there's a time frame for since the last time you had your vaccination.
That's a good one, Joe. I have not seen anything on that. Jeff, I don't know if Jeff is still on the call. We will follow up. Lindsay, you can maybe note that if you're not driving.
We're talking boosters and stuff like that, that if you were at a certain period of time, you had to have a booster.
Interesting. Yeah, I have not seen or heard that, Joe, from anyone, but we'll certainly follow up with that. Leonardo is talking about he's 16 and he's doing his first race. He'd love to meet up with other Americans on Friday night for dinner and just chat. I think that's a great thing that we'll put in the chat, right? We'll put in Slack and we'll have several people be able to get together. And I think it'll be a great way to maybe find a really good restaurant, really good in that a restaurant that's appropriate for a pre-race restaurant meal. And that'd be a fun thing to actually do. Okay. You guys have been great. Thank you. We will be in touch shortly. Course familiarization, they keep coming in. Catherine asked about when will be the course familiarization. That'll be one of those things that more than likely there will be some options by race management to get into the water. Those will typically be the day before. So when we get that schedule, we'll share it with you. If there's not a familiarization, then what we'll ask and seek is when you can actually get in the water on your own. Typically, that is not possible without lifeguards and whatnot because of liability. But we'll certainly find out what that looks like and feels like as part of the Q&A that we'll do with race management. Okay. Any final things? All right. Sorry, guys, have as much information as you maybe wanted, but we will continue to pursue, push, prod Make sure you guys get your planning done soon, and we'll be in touch. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you joining us.